Hello, welcome to session 2 of week 3 for the portfolio class. We're going to go over a little bit more about self-branding today and talk a little bit also about the rest of your assignments for this week. But first of all, I want to go over, there's a couple of critiques that we need to do that came in after our first session. And we'll talk a little bit more about those resumes and the self-branding and review assessment 3B to make sure that you understand what you need to do for that one. And just kind of recap a little bit about where we need to be at this point in this class, because we only have one more week left. So first of all, let's take a look at some projects that have come in. So you guys can get some feedback on that, and maybe the rest of you can also get some ideas and things to think about. So I've got 3 projects here that I'm reviewing, and this banner looks good. I think the change that was made from previous was that the white background of this logo was taken off, which is a good thing because you want to avoid all of those boxes and things like that. But the problem that happens now is that this brown color is not showing up really well on the background of this blue. And feel free, you always have the liberty to change, to reverse colors in a logo. So even if this is in brown, as part of the branded brown, you can switch this when needed on a darker background. So I would put the letters here, the brown letters, in white, change this box to white, and then put ice cream in brown, right? So that you're reversing it so that it shows up on this background. I would also make it a little bit larger. It kind of has an awkward space right here. You always want to align things with the objects in the photo. And so I would actually probably just fidget things just a little bit more and align at the top of his head here. So you still have kind of like a top margin that you're playing with, and his head is it. And so you'd move this up a little bit to align with that line. Just bring a guide down to do it. Move this up to that same place, maybe in just a little bit as well. And I would make the logo for the company larger, and then you could still put the address in there. And usually for an ice cream place, you don't need a zip code. They're not going to mail anything to this place. They're going to go there. So you could put the address or a website or something, but you don't necessarily need zip code, right? And then if this is your project for your portfolio, I would have more pieces than just one advertisement. So, keep the consistency with your fonts and your colors and all of that kind of stuff, but you want to have some other kind of element as well and not just one advertisement. This one here, I think, is looking pretty good, pretty nice and bold, but again, we have these alignment things. And so here we have, if you were going to put rulers down for the horizontal alignment of these different items, you would have 1, 2, 3. See if you can combine those to be, just 1 or at least just 2. So either you can, move this up to align it with the top here, or you can move it down. All of this feels a little bit low, actually. So I think you could move some of this up a little bit more. You could even make the 6 a little bit larger if you needed to. But, if you could align everything to that top line, I think you'd get a more smooth. This invitation kind of presents a few conundrums that you can end up with as a designer. And that is getting different feedback from different people. In the notes, you mentioned that it was suggested that you change this font right here. I'm going to zoom in on that. The script font, you know. But this font that you're using right here is an italicized font. And personally, I don't feel like there's enough contrast between that italicized font and the script font. So in the new version, I feel like there is kind of a conflict between this font that's being used here and this font. And we see it even more down here where you have like this font here and then that's mixed with the script font here. They're just too similar somehow. But there's, you know, they're different, but still too similar. So you don't have a good contrast there. So I actually prefer the font combination that you had here. You could have a different kind of script if you wanted to, but I prefer this contrast. But I do think that the problem here is that, you know, this line is too long. I would put 2017 on its own line and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a separate line. And here, you've moved that down so that the line is not as long, but it doesn't really make sense in the segmenting of the information because you have the date, the year, and the time on the same place, on the same line. And the year and the time are not really that connected, right? Because the date and the year are more connected, and then the time separate. So I think the time should be on a separate line. You could also have the year on a separate line, but not the year and the time on the same line. Okay, so I think there's still some more changes that could be done, and I actually think this one is closer to the ideal. All you have to do here is just make one line break right here, put the year on one line, and then have the time on the next line, and this one's good. But again, sometimes you're going to get different feedback from different people, and so you end up having to be the ultimate decision maker on those kinds of things. So, you know, try it, look at it, get some feedback maybe from other people to see what makes sense to them as well. Then we have several pieces here. For this project right here, again, simplify. This one here has 10 pages. That's way too many, way many more than you need for this project. Just take a look at it here. I would keep this one here. I think it's looking good. Then this one before and after. And then the black and white, you can have that. And then I don't know if you really need these different sizes. It's a little arbitrary anymore to, you know, have these different sizes. I think you can see what it looks like small. That's kind of good. But you also, it's good for you to see because you realize that when it's small, you can't even read the name, right? So it becomes kind of a different style of logo. So I would probably take out this page and this page. I don't think you really need that in your Behance. And then if you want to show it on different colors backgrounds, just show them side by side. I don't think you need a separate page for each one of those for that. Let's see. And so this is the resume. So you don't want to have the resume as a portfolio project. That's just going to stay with your resume. And this is, if this is a business card, then I would do, keep in mind how small this text would be, because I think that might be even really hard to see if that's a business card. And then we need some kind of frame around this so we know that that's a business card. Packaging is good. This is the flats for the packaging. Be a little bit careful here with the other color coming through there, making sure that we can still read that text. And then for the Fit Me magazine, I think this is getting better from the feedback that that you have there. So here I would be careful with with having a break and a hyphen right here on a right aligned word. That's very difficult to kind of see. You can just do your own line break. So just break it right there so that you just have those other two words on that line. This is a little bit difficult to read right here. Is there another place that you can put that, or do you need to put some kind of transparency behind there so we can still read that text on here? You could also just have, you have a little bit more room. You could have the headline just down here. It doesn't have to be on top of the image. This is looking pretty good, pretty neat and nice. Maybe give this a little bit more room since you have it right there, since you have space. Okay, so that's looking good. All right, I think this is also starting to look really good. Again, you know, if we can kind of just see just that thin gray line so we know what the parameters are of these different pieces. That would be helpful if this is the front and the back of a postcard, for example. And for the aqua, okay. So this information here has been broken up, like we've talked about, with several of these aqua excursion projects. But this last line right here, advanced reservations required, I think that could be on its own line instead of being hyphenated right there. And then the brochure, also looking a lot easier, a lot cleaner, a lot easier to read than it was before. The colors are a little bit different here. I don't know if there's a transparency on this orange on top of the blue or what, but it doesn't look like it's quite the same orange color. And here, these ones are not, they just tend to vibrate. Just really hard to read that orange on top of the turquoise. So I would, you know, change that. Maybe you're just going to have it blue if you're going to have it on top of this turquoise, or even if you have to revert to black or keep it white or something like that. It is a little bit difficult to read this white text in the smaller sizes, I feel. So maybe just have somebody else look through it and read it and see how they feel about it. Maybe you have to revert to just having a white background. And then you can use both the orange, the blue, and the turquoise for your colors of your text. And remember that the ultimate goal is for this to be easy information for the audience to get. All right, so remember that there is extra resources in the announcements that you can use as you're going through and making the revisions of your projects. They're listed in there. There's some downloads and a Linda playlist that has resources and some of those other videos from previous classes. So Assessment 3A has another component that you need to remember. It's the written part of it. And for the written part of it, you need to self-assess and evaluate your project so far. And so for each one of the projects, you need to go over and kind of let me know what the purpose and the goal is of the project, what design skills it features, and what the software skills that you're showing off. And you know, the changes that were requested and how you feel like they improved the project, or if you feel like they did at all. And then also how you feel about your proficiency in both design skills and software skills when it comes to this project. Did you feel like comfortable with making the changes, or did you feel like, oh, you really needed to go back and review things or rely on tutorials to be able to make those changes? So this is just your own self-assessment. So it's not like I'm going to grade you on how proficient you were or, you know, how well you did. you need to think about this, because it's going to help you decide what kind of skills do I need to continue to work on to be prepared to work in the industry, and to be prepared to, get a job in this, and let go of the training wheels, so to speak. And what things do I feel confident in that I can tell a client or an employer that I can do for them. Another thing you might want to think about at this point, if you don't have a lot of revisions to make, is to expanding on your project. So that means, creating another piece that kind of go along with it, creating a series of something for packaging, for example. It's quite easy to add, if you have one package, to add another one or two flavors or versions or something of that product, and that shows consistency. All you have to do is kind of take that template, maybe change the name of the flavor, the product, and maybe change some of the coloring, and you'll have kind of a packaging series, which is really valuable to have when it comes to packaging. And when you are resaving your PDFs to submit them for week 3, remember that, if the image is too large, you need to resize it. Make sure you uncheck the layers and uncheck editing capabilities before you save that PDF, so it's not too large. And also delete any of the unneeded pages that I have told you in the critique, or any that are mock-ups. Right now, you don't need to use those. You only need that for your final next week. All right, so just a little recap on what needs to happen with assessments 2A and 3A if you're behind at all. So you have to get credit, and you can pass the class even if you miss one of these, if you also have other things submitted, okay? But I just want to explain that you will miss out on credit on one of these if you don't have feedback first. They cannot be kind of the same revisions that you submit for both 2A and 3A. So they need to have gone through revisions and critiquing either by your FPA or by me to be submitted again. And you will only get credit for each round of revisions, okay? So for round 1, that's your FPA's feedback, and you make those revisions, then you can get credit for that. Round 2, you get my feedback, and then you make those revisions, and you get credit for that, okay? So if you haven't submitted the first round of revisions yet, or made any kind of arrangements with me, and I haven't gone through it either in the first critique that we had this week, or today's critique, you cannot get credit for that one. You can still make revisions and turn it in for week 3 and get credit for that, but you can't get credit for something that hasn't been critiqued, if that makes sense. If you have any questions about it, let me know, and we'll take a look at where you're at, and we'll work out what things I can give you credit for. So I have given you guys feedback in the grades for the resumes and the cover letters. And I'm a little bit concerned. You'll see in your comments there if it's something that I'm telling you it's not ready to show in a professional setting, or if maybe you need to make a few little tweaks or changes in there. But the super important thing for this is that it has to look good. If you don't have a well-designed resume and your cover letter is not also well-designed and well-written, you will not be hired for a design job. It's just as simple as that. This is the first piece that anybody is looking at. They're going to judge your branding design from it. They're going to judge your typography skills from it, your layout skills from it. And if those are not up to par, you're probably not going to get hired. And so this is such an important design piece for you guys to have, and you need to have that consistent brand. And I am happy to go over this with you one-on-one if you want to next week, just to make sure that you have something that you can actually use at presenting yourself. The whole idea by having the resumes and the cover letters were that they were supposed to be a branded system, right? So the cover letter and the resume should look like they were branded together and belong together. Notice in the examples that were given right here how they're branded together. Okay? This is the design. This is the resume. It doesn't work here. I thought it was this is where doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make something else. Okay, so for example, if this is your resume, you want to keep that same header, that same look, that same, consistency for your cover letter as well. You want it to look like a branded system. So if you're, for example, you can just look for okay. If you look, search for graphic design or branding. Then, let's see here, there's a lot of business cards, but what I kind of wanted to show you was, okay, let's look at this one, for example. Okay, here you have the cover letter, here you have the resume. They feel like they're branded. They have the same colors, they have the same fonts, they have the same layout. You can kind of make it easy for yourself by working with the elements that you already have on your resume and then echoing those in a very consistent way on your cover letter. So that's one thing that's super important. They should feel like they're the same thing. I've got a couple of different links to some YouTube videos or talks rather on branding yourself. So this is one, it's only 2 minutes long, and this one here is 13 minutes long. But I'm going to give you those links, and I want you to listen to them maybe when you're working on your projects and things like that this week to kind of help you get some ideas on how important this part of your design work this is. And again, I would be happy to give you some one-on-one advice on this if you want it next week. And even if you don't have time to meet with me next week, go over this with your FPA again, before you graduate or right after you graduate, to make sure that your resume and any cover letters or anything like that that you send out are professional, look well designed, because otherwise you are basically just shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, so also a reminder of assessment 3B. Remember, that is the paper on the job skills assessment. So you're going to find 3 job postings and write 150 words for each one of those job postings, covering the questions: why it's a good fit, what applicable skills you have, maybe describing how you would apply for that job, and put that link in the link to the job posting after that paragraph as well. All right, so this week I'm going to be off kind of for the rest of the week. I'll occasionally check in my email, but probably won't be able to get back to anybody until Monday. But then next week, you will be wrapping up the revisions. We'll have a final critique in our live session. You'll be making mock-ups and uploading to your projects to, and organizing your Behance. And then from your Behance, you're actually also going to generate an Adobe online portfolio. but we'll go through this more next week. We'll have 2 sessions, one that is critiquing and the other one just doing a demo on what you need to do that final upload and create the online portfolio. So let me know if you have any questions, any concerns, and let's push it through to the last week.